2030.
Saudi Arabia, the Porn
2030,
Fund,
it's a
there's
big
a lot of
vision.
excitement
This
around
transformational
NEOM specifically.
change. Every aspect of the kingdom, economic, social, cultural, religious.
The 2030.
This is the 2030.
Yalla, 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 yalla.
This is the 2030, episode 7. Hello, Hanaa. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. So we've got some background tech issues that have been ongoing for a little bit. I'm in Riyadh now, and you are in Los Angeles. So the time difference is also whack, as you can see from the lightness and darkness, the yin and yang we have going on here. But otherwise, everything is great. Alhamdulillah. We have got a really fun episode this week. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode this week, but we want to kind of start reading a little bit of feedback we got. I guess we kind of unofficially, we didn't have a big rollout, but we just started telling people in our networks about the 2030 and what we're doing here and what we're building here. So it's really nice to hear feedback from everybody who was responding to that and writing to us, wishing us well and saying that they're subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed yet, just wherever you're getting it, just do it now. And then the content comes to you. You don't have to do anything. But it's been really nice to hear from many of you out there. A couple that I want to read, actually, that I got that I thought were cool. And this is going to be a little bit of a flattery session, so hang in there. This one is from Fatima Hamlan. Oh, wow, the dynamic duo has joined forces. Bravo, Lucien and Hanaa. I didn't know you knew Fatima. That's cool.
Yeah, I know Dr. Fatma. I mean, we met in person actually at an event that's related to why I'm in Los Angeles, but we've also collaborated a little bit online about some other things too. Her work is amazing in the field of women's health.
It really is. This one's from Amna. Oh, wow, this is amazing to break stereotypes and show the rapid transformation and potential of KSA. Looking forward to it. Thanks for that. And so we're going to, at the beginning of every show, we're going to kind of read feedback that we get, good and bad. We love the feedback that sort of responds to what we're talking about on the show. We've talked about this before. We're sort of on a pursuit here. There's going to be a few things we say that may not be correct or that other people may say, hey, that's only part of the story. We're trying to explore and learn here. So we love all kinds of feedback. Actually, here's a piece of feedback from the previous episode. Quote, next time you're recording with Hanaa, tell her that you learned that the name of her son, Ferris, means knight. So fencing is a very suitable name for him, LOL. Yeah. And that's true, right?
He's our little knight in shining armor.
Yeah, and a swordsman too, so that's pretty cool. Anyway, there's a lot more, and there's many ways you can get in touch with us. You can email us. Our email addresses will be on the show notes. Obviously, we're on LinkedIn. We're kind of big LinkedIn dorks, but we're also on every other social network. So reach out to us if you want to say hello. We see everything that comes in, so just, holler at us. Hanaa, what do you think? Let's get to your deep dive this week.
So I'm in Los Angeles. I just arrived earlier today. I don't know, whatever. It's May 11th. And this week, a group of 35 students, Saudi high school students, joined by the King Abdulaziz and his Companions Foundation for Giftedness and Creativity, also known as Mawhiba. They arrived in Los Angeles to compete in the Regeneron International Science and Engineering Fair, ISEF, 2024, which is the world's largest pre-college STEM competition, STEM being science, technology, engineering, and math. And that is taking place here from May 11th to 17th. So this is an international competition that brings together over 1,800 students from 75 countries to exhibit and demonstrate innovation through science projects of their own. The students are competing for $9 million in awards, prizes, and scholarships. And it has sponsors from around the world, including Aramco and Mawhiba, but also Google, Microsoft, HP, National Geographic, Siemens, Caltech, different foundations, and many others. So for the Saudi students, the journey actually begins with their participation in the kingdom in something called the National Olympiad for Scientific Creativity, also known as Ibdaa, where students begin by submitting an application online through a portal, and then that's filtered, and you basically end up with a Saudi team that comes to compete internationally. So in the 2023-24 session, this one that we're talking about now, over 200,000 students applied in the first instance. That's in comparison to the first year that Mawhiba did this in 2007, when only 21 people had registered. This has increased over the years into the mid hundreds, 200, 300 in 2008-9, but then it continued to grow. You had 52,800 in 2013, and so on until you got to this 200,000 as the first group. So students from all over the kingdom compete to make it to first local fairs and then central ones. This is boys and girls from everywhere in the kingdom, from Riyadh to Rijal Alma and Khobar to Khamis Mushait. Private and public school students in their first or even their final year of high school. There are no prerequisites, but a lot of the students do enroll in Mawhiba programs to begin with, and then they're encouraged to apply. And the ones that do the best are the ones that have the best mentors in different universities. So these are really ambitious science projects in kind of fields that, go above my head, really. There's 21 different scientific fields, from things like material science, botany, software systems, to environmental science, environmental engineering, epidemiology, energy and sustainable material design, biomedical science, and so on. So after the 2022 achievements, where 16 top awards were achieved by the study students, that's like 15 gold, silver, and bronze medals. You then had, in 2023, 23 main awards, and 4 special awards were picked up by these study students. So they're coming here, they're competing big, and they're going home with gold medals. And so the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, really expressed his happiness. He invited them. There was a wonderful photo with them together, and pointing out that their achievement is just the beginning. It's the first step of their lives for a very prosperous future. And he wished them success in their future journey. Since then, all of these students really do get a lot of media attention. And last February at the Human Capability Initiative, where we met, actually, there were 2 Mawhiba winners from the previous year on the success stage, Hanaa and Faisal Muhaish, talking about their journey. Faisal, for instance, won the first place prize in chemistry. His project was an electrocatalyst that produces hydrogen from seawater with high efficiency and low cost. And so, yeah, a lot of the projects are really things like that. They're very, very cool. I'm really lucky to be working on an academic project with them. I'm so happy to be here. I haven't seen them yet, but tomorrow I'll get together with the team that's accompanying them and start working more on some of the interviews and observations.
Yeah, really good one, Hanaa. There is a documentary, or like kind of a docu-series, I guess you would call it, from National Geographic. I think you mentioned that. But yeah, so you can actually watch this, and it is really cool. My really good friend here, one of my oldest Saudi friends, his son did this last year. I think it was last year, and it was held in Texas, I believe it was. Austin?
Dallas year, yeah.
Yeah, Dallas, yeah. And he is the smartest young man I've ever met, regardless of what nation he is from, but he happens to be Saudi, and he is now at Stanford. His name is Yazan Al-Flaya, and he's just like one of those kids, young men, who is just so curious and obviously intelligent. His Royal Highness wished these students and young people well. Often they're already well on their way to being very well. They usually attend some of the top universities around the world and get into the fields that are going to be driving advancement in industry and technology for the next few decades. So for Saudi Arabia strategically to have a cohort like this going to LA to hang out with Dr. Hanaa and also participate in this is really sort of indicative of the importance on education that the kingdom is placing now, especially when you could compare it to the pre-Vision 2030 years. So this is just so cool.
So Mawhiba has been going on pre-Vision 2030, but I think it's just really accelerated. And I mean, again, this year has been the most competitive year. They struggled to narrow this down to a 35-person team. Normally, it's, not that hard, but the judges, which are professors from all over the kingdom and the world, really, that come to judge these students in their specific fields, they really struggled. So, this, normally it goes kind of from 400, like 390 to 40, and then 35 of them travel. You kind of have a bit of a reserve team. But actually, this year, they awarded 45, I believe, top prizes in Saudi, and then 35 of them came here. So it's hard, and they're great. But I think really want to reiterate how incredible they are, and how when I interact with these students who, by the way, are doing incredible things at home too. This is one of many science competitions that they normally participate in.
Yes.
And they do really cool summer programs at KFUPM and KAUST and King
KAUST.
Abdulaziz University, King Saud University, and it's growing, right? And so they're just really, really motivated, and that's one of the things that I'm really interested in studying. But my biggest takeaway thus far really is in kind of this formative experience where the students are building lifelong relationships with each other that are going to carry them through the ups and downs of their lives. It's just a dose of real kind of hard knowledge and science that they're getting in the labs with these professors who are mentoring them, but then a lifetime of training on the social and emotional skills that they need to really master in order to succeed in life, and all of those soft skills that you need in the labor market. And they're building just incredible networks of connections that they continue to draw on. So they're very, very resourceful. And so this is just an incredible opportunity. And I think there's so much to learn from how they run this. Because Mawhiba is a nonprofit that works very closely with the Ministry of Education, who also have a lot of giftedness programs. But, you know, there's just through collaboration, you always get very, very, I think, incredible results.
Yeah. As this podcast may indicate as well. By the way, also shout out to KAUST. KAUST is absolutely one of the coolest places I've ever been in my life. It's north of Jeddah in a place called Thual. And, you know, there's a long drive with not much from between Jeddah and Thual. When you get there and you get through sort of, it's pretty much walled in, but it's like a whole city size. And you get there and it's like you're in California at Berkeley or Stanford. It's incredible. Mm-hmm. And actually it kind of looks like that too, because a lot of the professors and professionals that are brought in to teach alongside their Saudi colleagues are from that university. And I do venture capital stuff, so I've been there several times in the last year. And it's just, every time I go there, I'm always like, I could live here. This is really nice. And they're doing amazing stuff too with the youth around Saudi Arabia, bringing them in. In fact, the young gentleman that I mentioned, Yazan, had been there several times. When he saw on my Instagram that I was there, he's like, oh, KAUST is the best. And so that's such a cool project there, but really good story. Hanaa, thank you for sharing that with us.
KAUST just being the King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, in case people wanted to look it up.
Yes.
But yeah, cutting edge research in really cool science areas. And I also was there recently, and I met with a lot of the students, the pre-summer students that often do compete at Mawhiba too. I was there to speak a couple years ago. So it's such a cool place.
It's such a cool place, and it's not just like a university. It's like they're trying to be a leader in certain areas. They have a few super large supercomputers there, and I mean, they're entrepreneurial investment stuff, and all the team working there in developing, especially deep technologies that spill off from universities, is amazing there. And then the campus itself. I mean, well, actually, before I discuss that, you mentioned one of the technologies or submissions from one of the Saudi students was in seawater, and they do a ton of stuff along the Red Sea, coral preservation and restoration. They really, I mean, it's really
vertical
beautiful.
Farming using seawater too, right?
Vertical farming using seawater. Yep.
Which is pretty, I mean, again, thinking about sustainability, which they're doing so much interesting work in solar energy as well. Like just a very cool place where you're really thinking about the future.
Yep.
in all of its forms.
Good one, Hanaa. Okay, Hanaa, let's get to the news. Sticking with the theme from your deep dive of technology and cool stuff, Saudi Arabia is test flying taxis and drones this Hajj season. The Minister of Transportation and Logistics Services, Salah Al-Jasser, announced that it will be testing flying taxis during the Hajj season, which is coming up beginning June 14th. Al-Jasser has commented on this saying, quote, "These represent highly advanced modes of transportation, including taxi applications. There is a race between many specialized companies in the transport sector to provide the best means of transport over the coming years."
Which is very interesting. I think a lot of the pilgrims have started arriving in the kingdom already, and I was reading some interesting stuff on how they're preparing for them in the basic cleaning, the the mosque and so on and so forth. But in general, this is really interesting, much more interesting than how many tons of perfume and air freshener they're using. So again, apparently Saudi Arabian Airlines also unveiled plans to operate flying taxis to ferry the pilgrims between King Abdulaziz International Airport in Jeddah and hotels in Mecca. And Saudi intends to buy around 100 aircraft to operate the service. This was something that I think they announced last year in January, where the director of corporate communications, the spokesman of the Saudia group, said that they had purchased Lilium jets, which are German electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, to shuttle between Jeddah Airport and Mecca and the Grand Mosque. So.
NEOM invested in a company called Volocopter, I think now a few years ago. This space, but this is a space that truly interests me in many ways, because I really think it could affect, once the sort of whole thing is established, the way where people live. And I think the effect on real estate could be huge. I mean, there will no longer be such at least a tremendous burden and pressure on people to live so close to where they work, into city centers, and could affect how urbanization develops over the next 10 to 20 years, right? Because I mean, if you can take a EVOTL, which is the electric vertical takeoff and landing that you just mentioned, you can pretty much, and obviously it's all about economics and price, but you can pretty much go wherever you want. And this is something that's like easy to understand as like an imaginative thing, but would be really, I just want this technology now. So I'm really excited about this. And good for them for testing it. And I saw that. Yeah, I'd love it. But I saw that Dubai as well is doing some testing this week. Maybe they got a little jealous, who knows? But that was sort of blowing up my LinkedIn and Instagram feeds. But they're also huge investors in this space. And I think whoever is leading in this space, when it starts to really take off and become more widespread, is going to be well positioned, because this is going to be a huge market. And airlines, as you mentioned, Saudi is investing. They're investing in all of these different Archer. There's a ton of different ones that are sort of building different versions of this. There will be a few winners. Just pretty cool.
Sticking with airplanes, Riyadh Air plans to expand its fleet with additional aircraft orders following its initial purchase of Boeing long-range jets last year, as the startup Saudi carrier seeks to establish itself alongside regional incumbents like Emirates and Qatar Airways. So the chief executive officer, Tony Douglas, was quoted in an interview with Bloomberg saying, quote, "We need a very large fleet. We're going to make a number of additional orders. We will be making a narrow body order. We'll probably be doing another large order after that as it builds up to scale," end quote.
I will be hosting 2 panels, found this out yesterday, at the Future Aviation Initiative. I think it's called a Future Aviation Forum, maybe. Got to get that right. Next week, it's going to be about a week from when this episode airs, at the Ritz in Riyadh. And so I had a pre-meeting with their team yesterday and was talking a little bit about like what's happening with this forum, and like what do you guys want to accomplish? And the first thing that they said was the Middle East region is like truly emerging as one of those like new players that will, in maybe 10 to 20 years, almost dominate the international travel space. You'll have Riyadh International Airport, Dubai, and Qatar all fighting for the global traveling segment. I mean, we just mentioned, and actually we've had some really great transitions here, but we just mentioned sort of eVTOLs and flying taxis and stuff like that. You're starting to see a region that is kind of emerging ahead of the trend in this space. Riyadh Air will be present at that event, hopefully bump into Tony D. What's happening right now is you have sort of Saudi Arabia configuring its national airline system with Riyadh Air. It's interesting because at first it was a little bit confusing. It's like, well, you have Saudia, and Saudia does operate out of both Jeddah and Riyadh, so that there's sort of a confusing purpose to this. And now you are seeing slowly over time where Riyadh Air's niche will be and how it will fit into the market. Yes. Okay. Saudi Arabia's non-oil revenues rose by 9%, which is really good, to reach 111 billion Saudi riyals, which is $29 billion in the first quarter of 2024 as compared to the same period last year. This is according to the Ministry of Finance. In its quarterly budget performance report, the ministry said the kingdom posted total revenues of 293 billion riyals in the same quarter, while its public spending amounted to 305 billion riyals. So a little bit of a deficit. This is according to official data. Total revenues increased 4% as compared to the first quarter of 2023.
So we spoke a little bit about kind of non-oil revenue and its importance in our deep dive of the Vision 2030 2023 annual report. It's growing. It's key to the country's development. The kingdom is diversifying as it continues to grow, and without that, the it basically, yeah, I think it's the most important part of Vision 2030, and I love to hear numbers that indicate that it's on the right track.
Yeah, I mean, this is the name of the game. The non-oil economy is massive, and then non-oil revenues is like, income from the non-oil economy, which is an indicator of how strong it is. Anyway, yeah, we want to see this as podcasters on a show called the 2030, because we very clearly see this as the way for Saudi Arabia to become a totally diversified economy and prosperous nation. And I'm looking out my window right now in Riyadh, and it looks completely different than it did 5 years ago. So there's a lot going on here, and it's cool to see the investments going on. And you're seeing a deficit as well, in part because of that. But yeah, that's good. Keep it up.
And in other news related to travel, again, Saudi nationals will now be able to benefit from 5-year Schengen visas from their first application. So this is really welcome for Saudis, because visa applications are not only kind of costly, they're really time consuming, and many people were getting Schengen visas issued for the duration of kind of one small trip when they had multiple coming up, sometimes for business, sometimes for pleasure. So it just really helps facilitate travel more. And I love seeing more cooperation, as I mentioned.
It's cool. This does not, of course, include your adopted home country of the United Kingdom. I guess
you have
I was
to
about
be
to say,
careful.
Yeah.
No, even pre-Brexit. Pre-Brexit.
Yeah, interesting. It says, UK is no longer part of EU. Never been part of the Schengen area.
Fortunately.
What's up with that? Come on, man, open up and get with a program.
It wasn't me.
I'm blaming you, of course. Actually, nor is Ireland, which, if anybody was wondering,
Part of Schengen.
God, I love doing this show because it's sort of like being back at school, where you're like kind of forced to learn some stuff. Like you feel like and you're like, I got this, and then you roll up your sleeves and you take a test, and you're like, maybe I should have studied a little more. And now it's like, okay, It's very edifying. And for us working, living here, traveling here, you're from here, obviously, it's lovely to do this. Anyway, congrats on the Schengen visa, which is great. Speaking of visas, Saudi Arabia's visa system is becoming. It's like, I can't believe how good it is and how easy it is. And it's not just, they introduced tourist visas and it's easy to get online. It's not just that. They're constantly innovating. For example, I was in Jeddah, arriving to Jeddah, I can't even remember how long ago, or 3 days ago. And as I arrived, the sort of welcome area looked completely different. And they had visa on arrival, kiosks. So you just show up and you just go to the computer and enter your information and on to the next step. And there were 30
so
of them.
It's really on arrival? You
on
don't
arrival.
Have to, pre-screen?
And I'm not going to, I'm never going to do that, because I'm never going to travel to a country, risking that they might say, ooh, sorry, and then you have to get back on a flight. Yeah. And they were busy. And you know what? In all places, Jeddah makes sense, right? Because of the Hajj and Umrah programs that are constantly going in there. Oftentimes on the Riyadh to Jeddah flight, which I've probably made 20 of in the last year, I'm the only Hawaja on the flight. I like to wear white shirts, so I kind of fit in, at least from the waist up. It's usually a bunch of pilgrims that are transiting from other GCC nations or around the world through Riyadh to Jeddah, or are leaving Jeddah, leaving the pilgrimage and going back to home. Sat next to a gentleman on the flight from Jeddah to Riyadh yesterday, and he was telling me, first of all, he got into a car accident, which piqued my interest. Normally, I'm not a big conversation on a flight guy. And he said, I got into a car accident, so I'm taking this flight home. But I just performed the Umrah. And he had this kind of relaxed air about him, which is not an air that I would have after a car accident, certainly. And he was just telling me how he was mentioning that they're starting to kind of close things down so they can get things cleaned up for the Hajj, but also just that it's such a meaningful experience for them. And I don't know how I got to this story by talking about visas, but anyway, good for Saudis getting the Schengen visa, I guess.
Visas and travel in general is interesting. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not that interesting to us right now because we're a little traveled out. As you either can hear from our audio quality, we're in a non-traditional setup. Saudi Arabia recorded a 16% annual surge in credit card loans in the first quarter of 2024 to reach 27.25 billion riyals at $7.3 billion. The latest central bank data showed. The Saudi central bank, known as SAMA, figures indicate a shift in consumer behaviors about cashless payment options and show that the kingdom is on track to become a cashless society.
The cashless part is interesting. The credit card loans is concerning a little bit. A 16% annual surge in credit card loans seems a bit excessive, but yeah, I mean, in April, a report by Global Data, Ravi Sharma, banking and payments analysts emphasized the transition from cash to electronic payments, noting while cash has traditionally been a preferred method of payment in Saudi Arabia, its usage is on the decline in line with the rising consumer preference for electronic payments, end quote.
Yeah, we actually don't know a ton about this data. Because, credit card loans, first of all, is kind of a vague term, right? It's like does that mean that more people are putting stuff on credit cards and paying it off, or are they taking actual loans? Technically using a credit card is a very short-term loan, but you can also get loans from banks that have credit cards. And if you live in the United States, you probably have had at least one tree's worth of paper shipped to you of banks marketing essentially credit card loans because they're super high interest. So we don't really know what's happening here, but it is good to see Saudi Arabia sort of, first of all, it is more cashless than the United States right now, full stop. That it's almost all digital. It's not that places don't necessarily take cash. That has happened before, but everyone is using digital payments. They're all using Apple Pay on their phone, which I've started doing as well. It's very cool to see like Saudi Arabia like really leaning forward into fintech, but there also could be some challenges here with loans and banking. Financial literacy is key for Saudi Arabia, especially with such a large young population.
But I think that's the thing. Like, I think older generations might have been more skeptical about using the fintech, and you have such a young population. It's great that they are plugged in, but you do have to be careful. And I think that in general, like Saudi Arabia's financial sector development program, which is one of the vision realization programs, did note that Saudis today are not saving enough. And so there is a push to really try and change that financial literacy across different sectors in society. So they're addressing that head on, and the program really highlights the need to enhance it. So they've developed a program, right? There's 297 initiatives planned, including 143 under implementation or almost under implementation across banking, insurance, financing, integrated payments, and the national savings strategy. So there's definitely a lot going on in this space. And then there's a lot of private initiatives that I know of, I've been actually involved in, such as Khazna, which is a nonprofit program to enhance financial literacy for women-led households that are from underprivileged families. And also there's things like Riyadh, which has been going on for a very long time, which is sponsored by SEDCO, and just some other interesting things, new products in the market as well. Like Tembra Capital, which makes it easier for you to invest a little bit in the stock market without having to open a big portfolio, and just do that through an app as a means to increase savings. So there's movement in the space for sure. Yeah,
and we need to kind of highlight that this is a space that we're going to be talking about a lot going forward. This sort of financial literacy space and the development of that in Saudi Arabia is of personal interest to you, as you noted with your background. So this was your idea, but it's a really good one. And there are other programs, like you mentioned, that are like it. And there's a genuine desire. I had a conversation with somebody about this the other day, that it's really an education issue. It's an information issue. And so there's a strong desire by older Saudis who have done this or who spent time in the West and understand how retirement works, to pass that information along to younger people who don't really know, even in all around the world, but just in general, don't really know about saving and how it can work for your retirement. So we will be doing a lot of stuff in this space. And I think that pretty much wraps it up for us. We have a shorter episode due to a little bit of technical hurdles, as well as a 12-hour time difference, about 24 hours of flying combined in the last day. Hanaa, thank you very much.
Thank you.